Hi everyone. In this lesson we'll be looking at issues of conservation and reconstruction in Pompeii and Herculaneum. Pompeii was first discovered in 1748. It has given birth to new methods of exploration and conservation. For example, Fiorelli's plaster casts. The site has also been damaged by many things. Pompeii has been exposed to damage caused by tourists, mismanagement, corruption, and a lack of funding. In recent times, it has become clear to all, archaeologists, tourists, governments, and academics, that Pompeii is in dire need of conservation and preservation. So this is really the issue today. It's not so much about going in and just desperately finding new buildings and desperately finding new remains. It's about conservation and preservation of the site. And in this picture, we can see some of the ruins of Pompeii. And this is actually the Forum. This is the grass area out the front. And it stretches for over 100 metres. And this would have been paved in ancient times. But, now it's just grass, and you can see Mount Vesuvius in the background. So you can see the ruins are a bit decayed, and conservation and preservation are the real issues today. In 1997, Pompeii and Herculaneum were put onto the World Heritage List. Despite this, not much has been done to save it. The excavated area is 44 hectares, and the total area is 66 hectares. So you still have about a third of the site which is not excavated. There is a lot of decay at Pompeii. It's caused by general neglect, vegetation that is not removed and thus breaks up the walls, and microbiological infestation from algae, fungi, and lichen. So you've got all these different environmental things going on. As you can see, you've got the grass and everything there, and there's other plants and other things growing which are causing problems at the site. Even natural things like rain and pigeons coming to the site, they all cause a bit of damage. There is also decay caused by physical and climatic influences in the form of humidity and changes of temperature. Also, unsuitable conservation materials have been used. So sometimes they've tried to conserve things and they've put certain materials on the walls and things that have just caused more problems. For example, liquid glass, resin varnish, wax coatings, and salt crystallization. So all of this has contributed to even more problems at the site. What is being done at Pompeii and Herculaneum? From 1975 onwards, there has been a project by international scholars to record the most notable houses at Pompeii and Herculaneum. From the 1980s, a computer database has been set up to record all the findings at the sites. So it'll all be kept on record. So even if the site's actually rotted away, in 100 years or 200 years, you'd still have the computer database. There has been a re-examination of early excavation reports and a re-evaluation of some of the buildings at Pompeii. Since 1995, the Superintendenza Archeologica di Pompeii, in other words, the Italian authorities responsible for the site, have emphasised the need to preserve the site rather than conduct further excavation. So ever since about 1995 in particular, there's really been a focus on preserving the site and conserving the site rather than further excavation. But even in the 1970s, they were talking about conserving more than preservation as well. An example of the issues involved is the Villa of the Papyri. Here's some of the ruins of the Villa of the Papyri. Now, this villa was an absolutely magnificent residence. It was already about 250 years old when it got destroyed, and it was owned by one of the relatives of Julius Caesar, and it was about 200 metres long or more. It was an absolutely magnificent residence. In 1998, excavation at the Villa of the Papyri was halted because of insufficient funds and a change in priorities. Guzzo, the superintendent in Pompeii, believed that conservation takes precedence over excavation. Andrew Wallace Hadrill agrees with Guzzo that you cannot justify spending more money on new excavation until you have preserved what you already have got. And Andrew Wallace Hadrill started working at the site around 1995. He says about Herculaneum, the archaeological, historical and decorative evidence is crumbling before our eyes. There is also an appalling infestation of pigeons. Under Italian law, the pigeons cannot be killed, so they populate the ancient houses with predictable consequences. There is opposition from people who want to excavate. They would like the excavation at the Villa of the Papyri to continue. Among the authors whose works could lie buried beneath the volcanic debris are Sophocles, Euripides, Aristotle, Virgil, Horace, and Livy. So, if you look at the Villa of the Papyri, the reason it's called the Villa of the Papyri is because it has a huge library. It's got a massive library which was written on papyrus. They have scrolls written on papyrus, which is what they used to write on in the ancient world. So that's why they call it the Villa of the Papyri. And they've got this massive library, and they're saying, we should excavate this, and we should study it all, because you could have some lost works of one of these people. One of Sophocles' works, Euripides, Aristotle, who's one of the great ancient Greek philosophers, Virgil, Horace, and Livy. You know, all their works could be in the Villa of the Papyri, just waiting to be taken out and studied. So that's why they're saying we should study these things. In 2004, in an interview with 60 Minutes, Andrew Wallace Hadrill was described as an angry archaeologist on a mission to save Pompeii. He said, "Man is wreaking far greater damage than Vesuvius. The moment of Pompeii's destruction was also the moment of its preservation." He goes on to say, "The public needs to understand that unless constant efforts are taken to arrest the decay, the site will within decades crumble to nothing." So he's very concerned that this whole site is just going to rot away. With the pigeons, the tourists, the lack of funding and all the rest of it, he's concerned that we'll just lose the site. In Herculaneum, less than half of the city has been uncovered. Excavation and conservation are very costly and difficult. Most of the town is beneath a layer of volcanic ash 18 to 24 metres thick. When Pompeii and Herculaneum were both covered by the volcanic debris, Pompeii got covered in a much less amount of debris, only about 6 to 10 metres, but Herculaneum was actually covered very, very deeply in maybe 18 to 24 metres worth of debris. So it's much deeper and harder to excavate it. There's also the impact of tourism. You can see all of these tourists coming through the streets. Just their walking around the streets causes a bit of a problem. And just imagine if a tourist takes something. Just imagine if one tourist scratches something off a wall or takes a pebble away. You have millions of tourists every year going to Pompeii. So if each tourist takes one pebble, then that's 2 million pebbles that will be lost. So the tourists are causing a lot of damage. Only about 500,000 people visit Herculaneum, so we have about 2 million tourists each year that visit Pompeii, and I've been to Pompeii myself, and that's the most famous site. It's a very famous site, but only 500,000 go to Herculaneum. I guess it's less well known. Also, even when I went to Pompeii, I went on a tour, and it was wonderful. We went on a bus to Naples. We got out at Naples. We looked at a shopping centre there. Because it was a special shopping centre. The way it was designed, it didn't have air conditioning. It was just designed in such a way that it would keep cool. And we could see over the water from Naples, we could see Mount Vesuvius. And then we went down to Pompeii itself, and of course we went on a tour of Pompeii. And we had an Italian tour guide, and she actually said that she knew Amadeo Maiori, or she'd attended some of his lectures or seminars or something. So I actually had a tour guide who had known Amadeo Maiori. But anyway, the point is, I went on a tour of Pompeii with a professional tour guide, but even our tour group did not go to Herculaneum. For some reason we missed it. So I went all the way to Italy. I had a wonderful time in Italy, and I visited some other European countries as well. But even I didn't go to Herculaneum. We only went to Pompeii and we visited Naples. For some reason, that particular group just didn't go to Herculaneum. Now, the tourists can be a good thing because this brings a lot of revenue into Pompeii, but it also causes a lot of problems. So naturally, people are going in, you pay money to get in, you can buy souvenirs outside. Naturally, tourism is good for the economy, but there's some problems caused as well. Tourists can cause a lot of damage to Pompeii. They can cause wear and tear to the ruins of the cities. And the main goal at this time is to preserve the remains of these cities. So we need to protect them. We need to protect them from the elements. We need to protect them even from the tourists, although they can be a blessing, they can be a curse as well, because they cause a lot of damage. So these are just some of the issues regarding conservation and reconstruction in Pompeii.